Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, after a disaster, can comics help set the record straight?
The misinformation that went around about Helene is just part and parcel of the larger problem around Appalachia's ability to tell its own story. Comics could be a uniquely successful model for addressing this problem.
In Western North Carolina, a new generation of Cherokee potters are keeping old traditions while shaping a modern practice all their own.
Because of colonization and systematic oppression, by all accounts, Cherokee people shouldn't have culture. We should be absorbed into American identity, but we do.
And schoolyard games come and go. But for kids in one community, marbles still rule.
They carry marbles all year long. You walk down the hall, you hear their bags rolling. They're always trading on the playground. It got to a point where it was driving the teachers crazy.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support for this program is brought to you by Solar Holler, helping Appalachian businesses and nonprofits manage energy costs through solar power. Information at solarholler.com.
Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. When Hurricane Helene struck Western North Carolina in 2024, it knocked out internet and cell service. That created an information gap that was quickly filled by conspiracy theories and misinformation. Now a new project looks to tell the truth of the disaster. Islands in the Sky is a forthcoming comics anthology about the storm and its aftermath. The book will feature stories told by survivors in partnership with comics professionals. Islands in the Sky was conceived by North Carolina comics writer Andrew Iden. Andrew Iden, thank you so much for coming on Inside Appalachia to speak with us today.
It's great to be with you, Mason. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
A lot of people will know you from March and its sequel Run, the graphic novel series about John Lewis, the former congressman and civil rights legend. So what led to this memoir, and especially telling it in a comics form?
I started in John Lewis's office answering his mail at a challenging time in his career. It was 2007, and we would have these meetings. How do we tell his story? How do we introduce him to young people? And I suggested, one, he really needs to embrace the internet. He needs to get online. But there was this another element that seemed really very apparent to me, which is that his career, his work, had always been about building for the long term. And in order to understand everything he was doing in Congress, you had to understand both where he started, how he came to national prominence, and it had to be done in a way that was different. And so when it was my turn to say what I was doing after the campaign was over, I said, I'm going to a comic book convention. I was going to Dragon Con in Atlanta. If you know that, it's a little bit of a rowdy show. And, everybody laughed at me. I mean, this was a room of people in suits, cost more money than I'd ever made in a month. And I remember this deep voice from the back saying, don't laugh. There was a comic book during the movement, and it was deeply influential. And it was John Lewis standing up for me in that moment, as he stood up for so many people who embraced things that were outside of the mainstream. First, you just love him for that, right? Yeah, there's a comic book during the movement. And then I went home and I read it, right? It was called Martin Luther King and the Montgomery Story. I found it on the internet. It was beautiful, 16 pages, cover to cover, studio house style from the 1950s. An introduction to Rosa Parks and Gandhi and nonviolent civil disobedience, as well as the story of Martin Luther King and the Montgomery story, the Montgomery bus boycotts. And I remember sitting there thinking, with all of this swirling in my head, about how do we tell John Lewis's story to a new generation? How do we explain the breadth and depth of it? And I'm reading this comic, and Congressman Lewis is saying, has words in my head that this was influential in the movement. And it just sort of was that lightning bolt moment where I thought, why doesn't Congressman Lewis write a comic book? And I just got this idea that he should write a graphic novel. So we were campaigning out on Wallace Road in Southwest Atlanta, just down the street from his house. you got to understand, there's two things John Lewis was afraid of, and really only two things. The first was snakes, or as he pronounced it, snicks. And the second was thunderstorms. So we're campaigning, we're hammering in yard signs in his neighbors' yards. And all of a sudden, this is flash of lightning, streaks across the sky. And before the thunder had time to make it to us and roll across, John Lewis had taken off in a full suit, taken off at a full sprint back to the car, leaving us standing there not knowing what to do. And we started to follow, and we're running with him back to the car. We all dive in. I think there were 7 of us in a 5-seater, just in time for the rain to start coming down on the roof. And one of my interns leaned in and said, "You should ask the congressman about the comic idea again. He can't go anywhere now." And so I did. I remember he was sitting in the front passenger seat of the car, and I was in the back. He looked and he got that little grin that you see in his mug shots, where it's not a full smile. It's just this corner of his mouth ticks up, and like he's up to something. And he said, "Okay, I'll do it, but only if you write it with me." And that moment changed my life. It changed everything. That's really where it started and where the idea came from. And at its core, everything worked because we trusted each other. We liked each other's company. We enjoyed working together. And we very much felt at ease in the trenches, doing the work.
Oh, love that answer. And that book has become, it's a trope, but it's true in this case, a modern classic. I mean, schools are incorporating it in their curricula. So let's talk about the Appalachian Comics Project, which is kicking off with the project about Hurricane Helene and its effects in Western North Carolina specifically. What was your experience with Hurricane Helene?
After Congressman Lewis passed, I left Washington and moved to my mother's farm in Edneyville, North Carolina, which, for those of you who don't know, is the town next to Bat Cave and Chimney Rock. And I had been working for many years to get my mother's old farm back to being a farm. When Hurricane Helene hit in September of 2024, and the day that the storm first started coming through, we had incredible flooding. And I thought, oh yeah, they're right, this is bad. Not really understanding what was about to happen. And that night, when the storm came through, it was just me and the dog in the house. And the dog was terrified because outside you're hearing all of this noise that isn't just a usual storm, right? It sounds like there's a train and it's dark, so you can't see it. So it's like there's a monster all around your house and you don't know what it's going to do next. It was scary. I mean, it was scary in a way because once the power went out, once the phones went down, you truly felt alone. And then, that sets off what really became almost a month. There's the first few days after where we couldn't get the word out, right? This storm really came into our view and the damage of it Friday morning. And it wasn't until Sunday night that we could even traverse our street to get towards town. And that was really when we started to understand the true scope of the damage.
You had the comics experience with former Congressman Lewis, and then you just went through this extreme experience with this storm. Walk me through how this idea formed in the wake of that.
In those first few days after the storm, we were pitching in together in a way that, looking back, is, I think some of us actually experience a strange nostalgia for it because no one asked what party you were a part of. No one asked who you voted for. No one cared if you were rich or poor, where you were from. It was, do you need help? Yes. What do you need? Water? Here's a bottle. Fuel? Here's a tank. A ride? Let's go. It wasn't what you would expect would happen, or at least what the movies told us happens, when society's fundamental glue comes apart. Without power, without internet, there was no way to use your credit card. So even if you could make it to the store, you couldn't buy any supplies unless you had cash. For many people who tried to make it into town or into places where they could get food or water, they had run out of fuel and their cars were abandoned on the side of the road. They were walking sort of in a daze, and people were picking them up and helping them. But what I found then is that once I was finally able to get to a place where I could get on the internet, where I could read about what was being said, I found that a lot of what was being put out there was made up. It was people from outside of the region, people who did not live through the storm, who were not part of the recovery efforts and the sort of reestablishment of basic needs of the community. We're talking about it and saying things that just weren't true, and it was starting to become a political football. I got frustrated with that, and rather than be angry or let it fester, I started thinking, well, what can I do? And so I started reading things about the history of the depiction of Appalachia in popular media, in the news. And I came across a graduate thesis written by a woman named Elon Justice, and it was published in 2021. It's called Hillbilly Talkback. And in her thesis, Elon talks about, one, the long history of outsiders controlling the narrative for Appalachia and the depiction of it, and how that gave them power over the region and allowed them to exploit the region. And then at the end, she proposes a solution, which is the co-authorship model. It was so eye-opening to me because in many ways it was the same problem and the same solution that the Black community had faced for so long in their own ability to depict themselves, to tell their own stories. And at the same time, I'm thinking all these things, and I'm remembering that I started to read comics in Appalachia. It was my grandmother taking me to the Piggly Wiggly off Hendersonville Highway and buying me my first comic. I was having almost these flashbacks, incidentally, also because that Piggly Wiggly became the parking lot. Piggly Wiggly's now closed, and that parking lot became one of the FEMA staging sites. And it all sort of started to come together in my mind about how to put this together. One, this was a symptom of a larger problem. The misinformation that went around about Helene is just part and parcel of the larger problem around Appalachia's ability to tell its own story. And two, that comics could be a uniquely successful model for addressing this problem, because not only does the region love them, meaning they're willing to engage with them in ways that they wouldn't with other mediums, but also they're cheaper to produce. And I thought, I have been here before with a problem that needs solving, where comics could play a useful and helpful role in facilitating the solving of that problem. And I know what it takes to start with an idea that most people don't understand, to bring about national acceptance, and then to use that to change the depiction of events. March is now one of the most widely taught graphic novels in America. In many cases, these schools are embracing it as like the book that they teach the civil rights movement with. And before that, there was something called the 9-word problem, where the Southern Poverty Law Center did a survey, and most students were graduating only knowing 9 words about the civil rights movement. And we fixed that within 10 years with comics. And so I took those lessons in my mind and those ideas, and then I was like, well, we'll start a little Appalachian Comics Project. So we tried to put together a plan for how we could fund the first work, which seemed essential, telling the true story of Hurricane Helene, putting together this co-authorship model where it would be our friends and colleagues in the industry helping the survivors tell their story. And I really believe, even in this first volume, we're going to see people build writing careers or at least successful bodies of work. This will go make a dent, make a contribution in helping people of the region and from the region be able to more successfully tell their story and speak for themselves. And that's really where we started.
Andrew Iden, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me, Mason. It's a privilege just to be able to talk to you and share a little bit about what we're trying to do.
Andrew Iden is founder of the Appalachian Comics Project. Its forthcoming comics anthology is titled Islands in the Sky. You can learn more about the project at our website, wvpublic.org. Communities in western North Carolina are still working through damage from Hurricane Helene. Before the storm, the Asheville Buncombe Community Christian Ministry ran a transitional shelter in East Asheville for about 180 homeless veterans. Then Helene and the flooding that came with it destroyed the property, forcing veterans into a motel across the street. Blue Ridge Public Radio's Lauren Hackett reports it will be a long time before the shelter makes a comeback.
At the ministry's headquarters in downtown Asheville, volunteers are swinging hammers, mulching, and repainting welcome signs. It's part of a day of action meant to help support their work. Ruth Lolo, a coordinator with the ministry, says the extra hands are helping lift her spirits.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's a huge morale boost for us, and it's going to really help us in the years to come to be able to provide the services that we do.
Still, there's a lot more work to be done. Lolo says Helene hit the shelter particularly hard.
We're actually bordered on two sides by the Swannanoa River, so when the water just came down the river really hard, it hit us really hard too.
2 buildings had to be completely torn down. The main building, where veterans lived, is salvageable, but needs about $13 million in work.
We had to rip out all our ceilings, flooring, walls, all of that has come out.
In the meantime, the ministry is paid to relocate around 100 veterans to the Quality Inn across the street from the shelter. Lolo says the ministries have largely relied on donations to pay for those motel rooms.
There's definitely been some challenges. It's a lot smaller space that we're working in now. We don't have any big gathering rooms like we used to have at our original location. We also don't have our kitchen or dining room.
Mark Riccatelli is one of the veterans staying at the Quality Inn. Before Helene, he had his own place in Swannanoa.
And I just got behind on bills because I lost 2 jobs during the flood. I was working at Zaxby's and Papa John's, both of them, which got flooded. So I got behind on my electric bill and everything like that, and I was asked to leave.
Riccatelli's story is similar to what many of his peers are facing after Helene.
A lot of the veterans that I know that went through the flood lost most everything. And all their possessions were in their rooms and it got flooded. So a lot of them are having to begin over again, you know. While the temporary space at the motel is doing the job for now, he says it's important that the permanent space get rebuilt. It's very important because not only do they provide a place for veterans to sleep, but they provide classes and groups to deal with PTSD, with trauma, and stuff that basically creates a revolving door for veterans. In the meantime, Riccatelli has found 2 new jobs, one at a pizza shop and another as a line cook at a bowling alley. In his free time, he and other veterans spend their days hanging out under a donated tent, where he says they chat, smoke cigarettes, and tell stories.
That was Lauren Hackett, Blue Ridge Public Radio's Hurricane Helene reporter. Coming up, Cherokee potters honor tradition and carry their art into the future. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Cherokee people have been making pottery in the mountains of western North Carolina for nearly 3,000 years. Today, relatively few Cherokee potters carry on the art form. Thanks to a community-led pottery workshop, a new generation is emerging. Reporter Anya Patron-Slepian has the story.
In a field on the outskirts of the Qualla boundary, next to a 2-lane road, Levi West is sitting under a picnic shelter. He's shaping a pinch pot out of a ball of clay.
I would start with my clay, kind of get it into a cylinder. You're just going to take and put your thumb in and slowly work your way around.
He works the brown clay with his hands, forming a small bowl. He sets it aside and grabs another handful of clay. It's a bit dry, so he sprinkles it with water and begins to work it into a long coil shape.
So now maybe it won't crack on us.
Levi is demonstrating the first steps of building a traditional Cherokee coil pot. He sets the coil on top of the pinch pot base and begins to smooth it with his thumb, connecting it to the bowl. He'll keep on adding coils until the pot reaches the height and width that he wants.
Try to smooth out things and get it like the most symmetrical I could. It takes a bunch of different angles and getting down and looking at things.
Levi took his first pottery class in 2022. Less than 3 years later, he won first place in traditional pottery at the 112th Cherokee Indian Fair. He was excited to win the award, but the real prize was beating his mentor, renowned Cherokee potter Tara McCoy.
I really wanted to beat her at the fair, just to kind of make her proud, not like I want to be better than her. I just wanted to make her proud and show her that, what you did was really meaningful.
Levi's introduction to ceramics was through a pottery program led by Tara and supported by the Museum of the Cherokee People. Now in its 4th year, the workshop currently goes by the name Diranesiski Garuwatli, or the Muddauber Community Workshop. It's a nod to the story of how a wasp helped create the first Cherokee pot. Tara started this 3-month program because she was concerned about the decline in the number of Cherokee potters. Dakota Brown oversees the pottery program in her role as Director of Education at the museum. She's been amazed by the results of Tara's program over the last 4 years.
The success that she's had with doing what she originally set out to do, which was increase ceramic artists in our community, and make sure that pottery continued on for future generations. That's what she set out to do. To see how fast that's happened just from her class is crazy.
Since 2022, more than 40 students have participated in the workshop. Tara teaches her students a wide range of skills, including how to dig and process clay, and how to hand build and fire pots. For Levi, Tara's mentorship was transformative.
I found something I love, and I don't know, I could never repay her for that again, right? It's just lifelong I'll be doing this.
The Muddaubers Workshop is just one of several cultural and artistic programs run by the Museum of the Cherokee People. The museum also hosts events related to Cherokee history, genealogy, and language, as well as other traditional crafts like basket weaving. Dakota believes that maintaining cultural traditions is an important responsibility for contemporary members of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians.
Because of colonization and systematic oppression, by all accounts, Cherokee people shouldn't have culture. We should be absorbed into American identity, but we do. And we do because people fought to have these things. That's worth something.
Dakota says pottery is especially symbolic because it's an art form that makes use of the land itself.
We as Cherokee people believe that we originated here, that we're of this land, that we're of this place, and this is where our origins as people are. And it's just this interconnected relationship that we have to land that I think is the most important part of the way that Cherokee art is done and is created.
Historical Cherokee potters used local clays and built their vessels by hand. They'd roll clay into coils, join them together, and hit them with a wooden paddle to strengthen and lengthen the walls of the pot. Engravings on the paddles were transmitted to the clay surface, serving to both decorate and strengthen the pieces. Once dried, the pots were heated into hard ceramic, either in the coals of an open fire or in a pit dug into the earth. While the pottery was highly decorative, it was made to be used. Cooking pots and storage containers were especially common. So were ceramics with ceremonial purposes like effigy pots and fire pots. Dakota says that in the Muddaubers Workshop, Tara emphasizes these historical methods and designs while also promoting experimentation.
She fully respects our ancestral practices when it comes to ceramics, and then at the same exact time will completely encourage somebody to go totally off the rails of what traditional Cherokee pottery is.
Dakota and Levi say this emphasis on innovation is especially important for Cherokee artists, who often face pressure to fit within what is considered Indian or traditional.
It's so unfair because we're alive and we're living people, and one of the signs of a living people is that culture changes over time. Language changes over time. Ceramics change over time. That is a part of being a living people.
Any Cherokee person that gets into pottery should learn the traditional way, and I mean from start to finish. And then once you have that understanding and that base knowledge, then it's like, okay, push it further. Let's see what else we can do with it.
Dakota says balancing traditional pottery with contemporary innovation echoes an important principle in Cherokee culture.
There's this like concept that whatever you do as a Cherokee person, that it's not about you. It's about the 7 generations that came before you, honoring those 7 generations that came before you, and then building for the 7 generations that are going to come after you.
At the age of 36, Levi is a proud representative of the next generation of Cherokee potters. He's already started assisting Tara with her classes.
The whole thing is that then whatever I learn, I come back and share with whoever is willing to listen and learn. It's kind of been full circle to go from student to helper to hopefully teacher one day.
Levi's passion for ceramics is also tied to a sense of responsibility to his community. Like Tara, he wants to reclaim pottery practices that were undermined in the wake of colonization and targeted cultural oppression.
My age group and a little younger, in their 20s, like there's this passion and this sense of urgency just to learn, to bring all these things back.
Levi hopes that where we're sitting, in a picnic shelter on a green patch of land, can be part of that reclamation. He's planning to develop this field into a community art compound. He recently purchased the land with the help of local and regional organizations. We walk to the small creek that runs parallel to the road. Levi points out a clay deposit in the creek bed that he recently discovered.
I noticed there was some gray clay, so I was like, well, hopefully the vein kind of comes up. So I got to digging around, and wish I had a shovel here, but...
Levi digs his fingers into the wet earth, pointing to a clump of gray amid the brown dirt.
Here we go, there's a good piece right here. That gray right there.
Back at the picnic shelter, a small wood fire kiln is halfway completed. Levi removes a blue tarp to reveal the structure, which is built from white and brown fire bricks. In addition to the kiln, Levi plans to have a space for pit firing and areas for processing clay, dug from the surrounding land. This clay paradise will also be used to cultivate materials for other crafts like river cane for basket weaving and native plants for natural dyes. Levi hopes the compound will play a role in maintaining the histories and practices that are vital to Cherokee life.
It's not just important to learn about pottery and clay, but all of it. If we're all doing our part, then all that stuff will come back to us.
That story was from Anya Patron-Slepian and came to us from the Rural Remix podcast from the Center for Rural Strategies. Everyone's heard of honeybees, but there are hundreds of bee species native to the region. Kentucky Public Radio's Sylvia Goodman tagged along with researchers to understand which bees are still out pollinating.
Tara Littlefield with the Kentucky Office of Nature Preserves kneels down, peering intently into a flower in the midst of a 200-acre state grasslands preserve just south of Elizabethtown. She's watching a tiny miner bee, and it's blue.
Oh, look at him, like, just going into the flower. You can't even see him anymore.
Littlefield and Caroline Kane, a native bee ecologist and coordinator for the Natural Heritage Inventory, watch as the bee collects its nectar and coats itself with pollen. They tell me it's a type of Andrena bee, one they've seen before in the preserve. Kane says with practice, you can tell a lot about a bee just by looking at its face.
Some of them just have very easy to tell features, so on their facial features, on their abdomens.
For a novice, like me, there's no way to tell all of the tiny bees and giant bumblebees apart as they zoom through the large field of tall grass and flowers. But that's exactly what Littlefield and Kane are trying to do, figure out what bees live in our state today and in the recent past.
We got the list up to about 300 native bees over a couple of years. And now we know, just based on inventories of surrounding states, that we probably have at least 100 native bees that we still haven't cataloged yet for Kentucky.
Most of them aren't the kind of bees kids learn about in picture books or you might see at an apiary. Some live in holes in the ground or in hollowed-out flower stems. Most are solitary, without the complicated hive dynamics. And state researchers are on a quest to discover exactly how many native bee species have lived in Kentucky and how many are still left.
You know, we're not getting 300 species in our surveys. We're getting, what do you think, a couple of dozen at each site?
Littlefield says without that understanding, they can't manage state land to protect native species. It's likely bees that once populated the state aren't here anymore, or at least not in the same numbers. As the surveyors go around, they look for bees as they buzz between the tall grasses and catch any that they want to study more. They also set up bee bowls, little elevated cups of soapy water that trap, and yes, kill, a few bees for further study. While Kane favors a large net, Littlefield prefers using a small vial, sneaking up while a bee is collecting nectar.
I can't believe you actually caught that with that tiny little vial.
Littlefield says it's a bee she's seen before, but not today at this site.
The more locations we have for all the different bees, then we can get a better handle on where they occur throughout the state and how abundant they are.
These same surveys are happening across the state. John Abrams, the ecologist for Berea College's forest, also participates in the bee bowl surveys and his own surveys, too.
So I just walk around during blooming times of different flowers and just photograph every pollinator that comes to it.
Abrams says there could be so many different and rare plants and pollinators in the forest they just don't know about yet. And that information can help the college maintain the environment.
So that we can kind of balance, the needs of the college, the needs of the forest, the needs of people with the needs of the wildlife that occurs here.
Littlefield with the Office of Nature Preserves says it's all part of their goal to both understand native bees and inform Kentuckians how to protect them.
We come up with the state endangered and threatened lists, and now we're doing that for our native bees so that we know which ones are rare and we can focus our conservation efforts to help better protect them.
And once they've cataloged native bees in the state, Littlefield says there's still a lot more native bugs, plants, and animals that need tracking, understanding, and protecting. I'm Sylvia Goodman in Hardin County.
Kids still spend a lot of time outside in the summer months. Warmer temps and longer days mean more time at swimming holes and playing in the woods. And scientists say giving kids space to explore in nature is important for their development and mental health. Radio IQ's Roxy Todd recently visited one summer camp in Southwest Virginia to hear how kids feel about spending time in nature.
A dozen kids and teenagers are eating lunch at New River State Park. Like many people their age, they talk about movies and video games. But these kids are spending most of this week exploring the forest and river.
I like to spend a lot of time out in the wild.
This is Mason Cox's second year attending Junior Ranger Camp. Last year, he got to visit places he's never seen.
We went caving, and we had a blast.
This week-long day camp is for kids aged 11 to 14. They go fishing, practice archery, and go tubing and snorkeling in the New River. Most of the campers say they prefer to spend a lot of their summer outside, hunting for berries, fishing, and riding bikes. But not all of their classmates at school feel the same way, says 14-year-old Chandler Blankenship.
A lot of people think, oh, inside's so great, but no. When you go outside, you see a lot more than just the TV. I feel alive, so that's why I like going outside more.
Another camper, Ren Patrick, agrees.
I would say not a lot of kids in my school like to go out or would hike and stuff.
Even many of these kids who prefer the outdoors say they don't have as much time to spend playing outside as they wish because of school or their parents' work schedules.
A lot of the current generation are so overscheduled with extracurriculars and other things that they're not having that unstructured time.
Rosanna Bro is an associate professor of psychology at Virginia Tech. She says there's a lot of research to support that playing outside in nature has a wide range of benefits for children's brain development and mental health.
Time outdoors or time in nature has been linked to better mental health. So specifically, it's been linked to improved mood as well as reductions in depression and anxiety and stress.
Bro says time outdoors also tends to be less structured and more imaginative than time spent on screens. This helps kids be more creative problem solvers and critical thinkers.
You're letting kids just have that time outside to be creative.
She says summer camps can help provide space and freedom for kids to rediscover activities they enjoy doing outdoors. For the kids at the Junior Ranger Camp, it also means they can safely explore wild places with park rangers and community naturalists who teach the science about plants and animals. After lunch, the campers are introduced to some of the small animals that live in the river. 13-year-old Emily Gravely peers into a plastic container to look at a crawdad.
Oh, wait, that's really cool.
It unexpectedly reaches out a claw towards her.
Oh my God!
Gravely is startled, but unharmed, and she uses a microscope to peer at the underbelly of the crawdad, as well as a water beetle. After learning about the creatures, the campers walk down to the river in their life vests. They step in the river, peering through orange cones that magnify what's beneath the water. Some use nets to scoop up what they find.
I got a fish! I got a snail!
They put the animals in small plastic containers so the other campers can study them. After the lesson, they release the animals back into the river.
Got a crawdad. Oh, I got two!
They spend the next hour and a half learning science, but the lesson is informal, fun, and in the afternoon heat, most of the campers also swim a little and splash each other as they're studying what lives beneath the new river. In Wythe County, I'm Roxy Todd.
Hang out with kids for very long at all, and you realize some playground games never go out of style. Hide and seek, tag, and duck, duck, goose. Kids today still play those classics. And every spring, the students of one elementary school in Boone County, West Virginia, still get excited for a game that's more than 100 years old. Folkways reporter Zach Harold has the story.
A line of third graders file into the gymnasium at Ashford Rumble Elementary School and onto the wooden bleachers. Nearly every kid has a box or plastic bag in their lap, filled to busting with marbles.
All right, heads up, listen.
For a couple weeks each March, phys ed teacher Jerry Halstead puts away the jump ropes and basketballs. And for the next 10 class periods, his students are consumed with marble madness. It's a tradition that Jerry... That feels weird, I'm sorry. Ashford Rumble was my elementary school, and he was my PE teacher, so let me try that again. It's a tradition that Mr. Halstead started in his very first year of teaching at this same little school.
The first year, being a young PE teacher, we don't have nothing to go by. We have to make our own units, what we need. Well, I always wanted to introduce old school, recess, 1930 type deal.
He wanted to teach old school playground games like hopscotch, jacks, and marbles. The thing is, he didn't know how to play marbles. And this being the late 80s, there were no YouTube videos to show him how. So he turned to his uncle, Ray Riggs.
Everybody knew my Uncle Ray was the man of marbles, and he taught me how to play.
Mr. Halstead took what he learned from Uncle Ray and introduced it to his students. It was an immediate hit.
Jacks, I did jacks, and they didn't bite on that. Didn't bite on hopscotch either, but they bit on the marbles.
Me and my friends were obsessed with marbles, to the point that we would play it outside of PE class, at recess, and at home. Now, as with most games of skills, I generally got my butt handed to me, but that didn't matter. There was nothing more exciting than throwing my marbles in the ring and playing for keeps. Now, after I left Ashford Rumble Elementary, Mr. Halstead did too. He taught at a few different schools over the years, and everywhere he went, he took the marble unit with him. And everywhere he introduced this game, the students fell in love. After about 15 years, he returned to where it all started. And what he found were kids more passionate about marbles than any he'd ever encountered.
They carry marbles all year long. You walk down the hall, you hear their bags rolling. They're always trading on the playground. They got to a point where it was driving the teachers crazy.
Now, these kids enjoy playing, but it's the marbles themselves that they're really crazy about. Luke Holston showed me a metallic marble bigger than a ping pong ball. It was something called a Rainbow Bennington leg breaker.
I scanned my cousin a normal toe breaker made out of real stone for it.
It's the only one in school, and it's not average for the size that they usually make them in.
Parker Cooper's favorite is a black marble with white swirls.
There's 4 of these in the school, a Milky Way half pint.
Aspen Thompson showed me an orange and white marble that reminded me of a creamsicle.
This is an antique swirly.
She also had a green one with specks.
This is an iguana half pint.
And an orange one with stripes.
And a Bengal tiger.
Now, I don't remember any Bengals or iguanas or rainbow Bennington leg breakers in my marble rings. We mostly had swirlies and cat eyes. But of course, we didn't have Amazon. Many of the marbles Mr. Halstead's students now covet are imported. There's only one factory in the United States still churning out marbles, and they're the old school kind I remember. And it just happens to be a few hours away on the banks of the Ohio River in Payton City, West Virginia. This is Marble King, the last remaining manufacturer of marbles in the country. Workers shovel shards of glass into buckets and then dump them into the factory's giant oven. The molten glass comes out the front, riding on a corkscrew gear that shapes the red-hot orbs into perfect spheres. When it's fully up and running, this machine spits out 1 million marbles a day.
So those marbles are approximately 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's Barry Fox. She's the president and CEO of Marble King.
If we would put a piece of paper in one of those buckets, it would actually ignite it. So it takes 24 hours for these marbles to be cool enough to touch, to grade, and to go through.
Once the marbles are cool enough to be handled, employees hand check each and every one. Turns out there's no replacement for the human eye when it comes to detecting defects. Precision is important because most of the marbles Marble King produces are now used in industrial or architectural projects. Marbles can be found in everything from washing machines and dishwashers to NASA air balloons and spray paint cans. Architects work them into fountains and murals. But the company hasn't forgotten its playground roots. Marble King still makes plenty of marbles used exclusively for fun. The on-site gift shop features playing mats and racing tracks and other marble-powered toys. Kids can pick up a shooter marble emblazoned with the company logo or fill a leather pouch with a rainbow of cat's eye marbles, a style of marble that Barry's dad, Roger Howdyshell, pioneered.
My dad actually formulated a process where the cat's eye is actually a true eye. When you look in ours, you'll actually see 4 different veins of glass in the interior portion.
Barry's dad started working at Marble King fresh out of college. He worked his way up through the ranks and eventually, in 1983, at the age of 60, bought the business. But just 8 years later, her dad died, leaving her mom, Jean, to take over. Up until then, Jean had been a full-time homemaker. Running Marble King would be her first paying job. With the support of her kids and the company's longtime employees, she was able to keep the factory afloat and eventually turn it over to her daughter. Marble King will celebrate its 75th birthday later this year. To mark the occasion, they asked their employees to come up with a special edition marble to honor Barry's dad. The result is a beautiful peacock blue marble featuring the cat's eye design he invented.
Turned out beautifully, the ones that we've made so far, and they're totally awesome. And the guys love it. They love it. They love that part of this job. We're making the different cat's eyes, trying to make unique swirls, trying to do unique things with this glass. Be a glass artist. Do what you want. Here's the stuff. Let's see what you can make.
Just as Marble King faces competition from overseas competitors, the game of marbles faces tons of competition for kids' attention spans. But Barry says the game still holds an appeal.
A lot of times today, as opposed to it just being an in-school activity and everybody played in the playground, it's a marbles club. It's a group. It's a boys club, a girls club. They learn to play marbles. They learn to, how to play the game itself. And they learn good sportsmanship.
Hey, how many won some marbles on bowling today? Anybody win any marbles on bowling? Huh? Good job. Put your marbles away in your room.
PE class is over back at Ashford Rumble Elementary, so it's time to put the marbles away for another day. Mr. Halstead also knows something of this game's lasting appeal.
You ever seen someone like Grandpa's 80 and they got a jar of marbles in the attic? Why they got them in their 80? because they want them and they won't let them go. Even though they're 80 and they won't get rid of them. They will not get rid of them because it's trophies.
While none of Mr. Halstead's former students are quite 80 yet, there is a growing chance that there's a grandparent somewhere with a jar full of marbles they won in this same gymnasium under these same buzzing lights. And you know what? I wonder if Mom still has mine. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Zach Harold in my hometown, Ashford, West Virginia.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in the region. Zach also made a video about marbles. It's part of the Inside Appalachia Folkways television special that first aired last Thanksgiving on West Virginia Public Broadcasting. The show recently won a 2024 Ohio Valley Emmy Award. You can check it out on our website, wvpublic.org. It's summer fair season. A staple of county and state fairs is the annual craft competition, where everyone from 4-H kids to the local dentist brings their finest quilts and peanut butter fudge to be judged for cash and prizes. The prizes are usually pretty modest, but local bragging rights are at stake, as well as the highly coveted blue ribbon. Few have been as successful as Linda Skeens. The Russell County, Virginia resident has won hundreds of ribbons, which made her a social media sensation and got her featured in the New York Times. In 2023, Skeens released a cookbook featuring her winning recipes, plus poems, pictures, and a peek into her life in southwestern Virginia. Producer Bill Lynch spoke with Skeens about the book.
So how many ribbons have you won so far?
Well, when we went to Alabama last year to visit the people doing my cookbook, I had almost 1,500, and then I earned 60 more after that, and then I earned 33 the other day at the fair this year already. So quite a few.
That's got to be close to some kind of a world record somewhere.
It's so weird you'd ask that. They've been at least a dozen people say, have you broke a Guinness World Book of Records? I said, well, I don't know because I don't know how to find out, but they seem to think I have.
Not everybody does this. A lot of folks cook, but not a lot of folks get involved with fair competitions. What got you into it?
I've just always loved it. I love doing it. I've made a lot of good friends during the years. I have fun doing the crafts and I have fun canning stuff, and I just love baking. I just like doing it. It's something I enjoy.
Do you remember your first competition?
Yeah, it was probably around 84. I entered a set of pillowcases that I had. That's all I had. My son was entering a model car, and he asked me to enter them, and I told him they probably wouldn't win, and he encouraged me. And after I got started, I've liked it ever since, and I've not stopped.
How do you save your recipes? Do you keep them in a box? You have a book?
I've got 2 little shoe boxes, plastic shoe boxes full of my very favorite. Then I've got one box that's probably got 1,000 or more in it, old ones. And then I collect cookbooks. I've got several cookbooks that I cooked from, like my country and western cookbook I ordered 20 years ago. It's got cowboy recipes. I did James Arness's Gunsmoke Chili on a video in my home. It's one of my favorites. And then I have a Betty Crocker one that's like duct taped together. I have all kinds of cookbooks I love cooking out of them.
Do you have a favorite recipe in your cookbook?
Yeah, my Mexican cornbread. That's always my favorite. I love that stuff. I could eat it by itself.
Seeing as you're someone who has been in, I can't even fathom the number of competitions, walk me through one.
I do my crafts and I pick them out in the fall, what I'm going to make for next year, and I work on them in the winter when it's cold. Then I can stuff in the spring and the summer. I pick out what I want to put in there. And bake stuff, about 2 weeks before the fair, I make me a list of what I'm going to put in there, what I need, go buy it, and I cook like crazy for 2 or 3 days. And I'm very organized. I have a list of what I want to do. And a lady asked me once on an interview, she said, how many trial runs do you make for your fudge? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you know, do you do like chefs? Do you make 4 or 5 till you get it perfect? I said, no, ma'am, food costs too much. I said, I make one batch I pick out the prettiest pieces, put it in there, and if it wins, it does, and if it don't, it don't. I don't throw away nothing. I don't waste food. I'd encourage anybody just to try anything you want to try, because you never know. A girl was on my Facebook page this summer, said she'd never entered a fair, and she entered a cake and won a ribbon, and she was just tickled to death. And I was for her, because you don't know the judges. You never meet them. They close the doors when they judge food. They don't see your name on nothing, so they don't know you either. Your stuff is judged by the way it looks, the way it tastes, and some years you win and a lot, some years you don't win as much, but it's fun to do.
The rest of your time when you're not competing in a fair, you're bound to have some downtime, right? The fairs aren't year round.
Well, I have 6 grandbabies, 2 great-grandbabies. I have a husband of almost 59 years. I have Kathy, my daughter, and we've got a 69 Plymouth Roadrunner. We go to car shows on Saturday with our friends. And we like to play cards on Saturday night with our best friends, spades. And yes, I like to win. I try to win. They're pretty good, though. And I like to watch poker tournaments on TV with my husband. He's teaching me how to play poker a little bit slowly. I read my Bible every day, whether I read anything else or not. That's one thing I've made a point of doing.
Well, with the book signings and people coming up to you, what do they tell you?
95% have said they thought it was the most beautiful cookbook they've ever saw. They really liked the poems that I've written myself, my story, the pictures. Most people were expecting just a paperback, I think maybe, or a cookbook with recipes, and they were just really literally amazed and told me how much they enjoyed it and they're cooking out of it. And it's just been, I've met so many nice people. We was invited to Bristol last week, me and Kathy. A young man had invited me to a bake sale last year at a retirement center. And he started working at a little place called the Gingerbread Restaurant. And he invited me up for a book signing, and they cooked my foods in that restaurant for 3 or 4 days. And I sold books, and it was just, so people are just really happy for me.
So what's next? You got a sequel coming out.
I don't know yet. We're just going to finish this one up first, because I'm doing a lot of interviews right now. I'm doing got my picture in 2 or 3 newspapers down here. And I've traveled quite a bit, probably going to be traveling for some more book signings and just getting stuff like that done. I don't know. They might be one. I'm not sure.
Linda, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
That was County Fair champion Linda Skeens speaking with Bill Lynch. Her cookbook is Blue Ribbon Kitchen. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Jeff Ellis, Joe Dobbs and the 1937 Flood, Paul Loomis, Blue Dot Sessions, and Hello June. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Chris Julin. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.